He cast a spell, and his dermic powers transformed into a clone. Suppressing his cultivation to the pseudo-sage realm, he went to find Hanyu. In the valley, Hanyu wore a purple-blue robe and had a handsome face. His long hair scattered casually as he sat under the tree. His aura was like the surrounding flowers and trees. The scene was extremely peaceful. Hanju appeared under the tree beside him. The tree's shade covered his face. He stared at Hanyu and did not disturb him immediately. After 1,000 years, Hanyu had already lost his childishness. It had to be said that he was really like Hanju. Looking at Hanyu, Hanju felt like he was looking at his past self. It was not only his looks but also his cultivation style. He was extremely cautious and reliable. The more Hanju looked at him, the more satisfied he was. He even wanted to bring Hanyu to the 100-peak Immortal River. But on second thought, no, Hantuo had yet to be brought back. Hanju couldn't help but laugh at himself. No wonder grandpas often like their grandsons more than their sons. Hanju looked at Hanyu for a while before calling out to him. Hanyu jumped up in fear. A wooden spear appeared in his hand, and he looked at Hanju warily. Seeing this, Hanju wanted to laugh. After becoming a sage, he rarely encountered anything that made him laugh. "It's you!" Hanyu's eyes widened in shock. Hanju smiled and asked, "You still remember me?" Hanyu nodded. "You came to me 1,000 years ago wanting to teach me a cultivation technique. Then, do you regret it?" "To be honest, I once regretted it, but I don't regret it now. I'm very satisfied with my cultivation. I'll give you another chance. Do you agree?" Hanyu fell silent. Hanju wasn't in a hurry. He waited patiently. As he did, his main body looked at the 9 heavens. Fang Liang was still absorbing the natural source of the world. The sages actually couldn't sense it, and no one came to stop him. This puzzled Hanju. Hanju asked silently, "Why is Fang Liang doing this? 10 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? 10 billion years?" This was already equivalent to the value of the heavenly Tao. Hanju immediately chose to continue. He did not enter an illusion. Instead, a line of words appeared in front of him. Fang Liang, late-stage Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm, Tao Ancestor Inheritor, Master of the Heavenly Court, Immeasurable Emperor. He is currently fusing with the Tao Ancestor's will. Once the fusion succeeds, he will become the Tao Ancestor. Hanju's eyes widened. Become the Tao Ancestor? What was the meaning of this? And his cultivation level increased so quickly. Is Fang Liang possessed? It's not possession, but a fusion. This fusion cannot be analyzed with the system's current strength. Fusion. Hanju frowned and asked, "If the fusion succeeds, will Fang Liang become my enemy?" "It cannot be deduced for the time being. It involves an existence that surpasses the system's limits. How strong will Fang Liang be after the fusion? 10 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue?" "Continue." Perfected pseudo-sage. Hanju heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Fang Liang couldn't threaten him. However, this leap was truly ridiculous, as expected of the Tao Ancestor. At this moment, Hanyu replied, "I still refuse your kind intentions. I want to see how far I can go by myself. I don't want to rely on others." He spoke very sincerely, and his eyes became extremely firm. Hanju said angrily, "How far can you go by yourself?" Although Hanyu couldn't see his expression, he could guess from his tone that the other party should be very dissatisfied. "I'm not sure, either. Perhaps I can reach the Grand Unity Heaven Immortal Realm." When Hanyu said these words, his eyes revealed a hint of confidence. Hanju sighed. Grand Unity Heaven Immortal. To mortals, Grand Unity Heaven Immortal was indeed impressive, like an immortal. Hanju smiled. "Is that so? Since you rejected me, I have to teach you a Tao technique." He suddenly attacked and sucked Hanyu in front of him. Hanyu's eyes widened, and he subconsciously resisted. Hanju pointed at his forehead. Boom! Hanyu's mind exploded and he froze on the spot. After a long while, when Hanyu woke up, it was already late at night. He was the only one left in the valley. Hanju was long gone. Hanyu was stunned. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Technique. In the Taoist temple of the 100-peak Immortal River, Hanju sent a dream to Fang Liang. In the dream, Fang Liang opened his eyes and immediately bowed when he saw him. Hanju asked, "What are you doing?" Fang Liang replied, "Absorbing the heavenly Tao's providence." He suddenly hesitated, not knowing if he should answer. Hanju didn't point it out either, hoping that Fang Liang could say it himself. After struggling for a while, Fang Liang gritted his teeth and said, "To be honest, Grandmaster, I might become the Tao ancestor." Become the Tao ancestor? Hanju pretended to be confused. Fang Liang took a deep breath and said seriously, "I've long been chosen by the Tao ancestor. He taught me the mystical power of the primordial world and wants to support me into his avatar. Once I succeed, I'll transform into the Tao ancestor and control the heavenly Tao. Now, I can no longer repay you, Grandmaster. If I succeed, I will definitely take care of the hidden sect in the future and repay your kindness. If not for you changing my fate, I would have died long ago, much less be chosen by the Tao ancestor." Hanju asked, "After becoming the Tao ancestor, will you still be you?" Fang Liang said, "The Tao ancestor said that I'll still be me, but I'll take over the Tao ancestor's identity." I chose to believe him. "Have you really decided?" "I hope Grandmaster can agree." "In that case, it's up to you," Hanju said. He took a step forward and reached out to Fang Liang's shoulder. "Unknowingly, you're already so old." Hanju sighed. He was not acting. He was really sighing. When the two of them first met, Fang Liang was only a youth. After 70,000 years, not many people had lived together since the reroll world. Hanju still cherished it. However, everyone had their own ambitions. Hanju didn't want to force Fang Liang. Fang Liang felt bitter when he heard that. His expression became complicated. He did not cry. He was once the heavenly emperor, after all. He was no longer immortal. The two of them looked at each other in silence. The dream ended. Hanju's consciousness returned to reality. He muttered to himself, he could already hold his own. "I want to know if the Tao ancestor deceived Fang Liang. It involves an existence that surpasses the system's limits. It cannot be deduced." Indeed. Hanju had to change his question. What will Fang Liang do when the next calamity begins? 2 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Hanju fell into an illusion. When he opened his eyes again, he arrived outside the 33rd heaven. A majestic palace could be seen ahead. It was larger than all the Sage Dao fields. It emitted purple light and was solemn and mysterious. 3 words were carved on a plaque. Purple Firmament Palace. The scene in front of Hanju shrank. He came to Purple Firmament Palace and Fang Liang, who was dressed in a Taoist robe, sat on the 36th grade green lotus seat. The current Fang Liang had white hair. Although his face was still young, he was very different from the Fang Liang that Hanju knew. This aura was extremely similar to ancestor Shitian. Hanju thought that he had been discovered, but a figure passed through him and walked towards Fang Liang. He focused his gaze. Wasn't this Heavenly Venerate Xiandu? Heavenly Venerate Xiandu came forward and knelt in front of Fang Liang. "Greetings, Tao Ancestor." Fang Liang asked indifferently, "How was it?" Heavenly Venerate Xiandu replied, "I've already found that chaotic fiend celestial. I can put it in the heavenly Tao at any time to fight against the son of the immeasurable calamity. Yes, when the son of the immeasurable calamity steps into the pseudo-sage realm, I'll release the chaotic fiend celestial." Understood. Hanju was curious. Release the chaotic fiend Celestial? Who was the son of the immeasurable calamity? For some reason, Hanju felt that it would be Han Tuo. After the illusion ended, Hanju immediately asked who this son of the immeasurable calamity was. 2 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Etion, rank 1 immortal emperor, son of the heavenly Tao, chaotic fiend celestial, the great Providence bearer chosen by the heavenly Tao. He carries the mission of unifying the immortal world. Hanju heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not his son. From the looks of it, Fang Liang was not targeting the hidden sect. Not bad. Hanju shook his head and threw away his distracting thoughts. He started cultivating. Time passed as the immortal world changed day by day. From time to time, mighty figures would appear. The immortal world became more and more exciting. The legend of the sages became vaguer and vaguer. The gazes of all living beings also landed beside him. Li Daokong, Shi Du Dao, Ji Xianshen, Jiang Dugu, the Golden Crow Demon Emperor, the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, the Divine Might Buddha, and the others became the top and most prestigious mighty figures in the immortal world. As for Han Tuo, although he had a good relationship with Yi Tian, he kept a low profile and was not famous. On this day, Zhou Fan returned. Hanju opened his eyes and moved him into the 100-peak immortal river. He also checked his attributes panel. 1720 years had passed. Zhou Fan's return caused the personal disciples to gather. The Fusong tree became lively. Hanju didn't pay attention to Zhou Fan but checked his emails. Your grand disciple Fang Liang has fused with the heavenly Tao origin. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your good friend, Heavenly Venerate Wufa, was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure. Your good friend Emperor Shao was cursed by a mysterious curse. Your good friend Huang Zuntian has recruited disciples. The providence of the GS school has increased, and his cultivation has increased greatly. Your good friend Pen Xin was attacked by the ancient master of calamity. Your good friend Shi Dudao was attacked by your good friend Li Daokong. Your good friend Li Xianao was attacked by your good friend Jiang Dugu and was severely injured. The level of his friends was too high. It was very difficult to see a situation where the number of attacks exceeded 10,000. When mighty figures fought, it was almost always a one-on-one battle. After all, at that level, there were not dozens of people joining forces. Dozens of Zenith Heavens ganging up on a Zenith Heaven cultivator? It was a rare event. Hanju was attracted by Huang Zuntian's recent situation. This fellow had begun to develop the GS school, and his providence had also increased greatly. He was quite something. The GS school was about to suffer. According to Hanju's understanding, this fellow was only suitable for internal strife and not management. Back then, Huang Zuntian's sect had fallen at Hanju's feet. That was also the stepping stone for him to open up the path of invincibility. However, the GS school's calamity had nothing to do with Hanju. Several days later, Zhou Fan came to visit him. Hanju let him in. After bowing, Zhou Fan said, Master, an array formation has appeared in the chaotic city. It can lead to the deity realm of the ruins of End. The other sects have already sent disciples there to learn. The hidden sect has no background in the deity realm of the ruins of End, but the sages have sent me an invitation. They say that the Tao field in the deity realm of the ruins of End can accept disciples of the hidden sect and comprehend the great Tao. This matter is too big. I don't dare to rashly decide, so I came back to ask you. Hanju asked, why not say it through the myriad worlds projection? Zhou Fan chuckled. I wanted to come back and rest. The chaotic city is really boring. The disciples of the various sects look harmonious, but they are actually wary of each other. It's meaningless. Hanju said, the chaotic city is very important. You have to return after resting for a period of time. I understand. What about the Tao field of the deity realm of the ruins of End? No, reject the sage's kind intentions. My hidden sect will stay in the heavenly Tao and not involve itself with the deity realm of the ruins of End. Will the difference increase? Humph, if it's really that easy, why didn't their backing in the deity realm of the ruins of End attack when they were in danger? You mean you can leave? EAD new chapter S on no VELN, calm alright. Zhou Fen stood up and left. After walking out of the Taoist temple, he was still thinking about the deity realm of the ruins of End. He suddenly saw Zhang Zhu. I'm really confused. I don't even know my master's background. Why should I worry? Zhou Fen shook his head and laughed. Then, he stopped thinking about it. He believed in Hanzhu. Several months later, the 100-Peak Immortal River welcomed another visitor. Is Hanzhu here? The newcomer stood on the cliff and shouted. Hanzhu opened his eyes. An old friend, Zhang Guxing. He was once a prodigy of the Divine Palace. Later, he guarded the Sword Dao River. Hanzhu even recognized him as his elder brother. After thinking about it, Hanzhu moved Zhang Guxing into his Taoist temple. Zhang Guxing was only at the one mystic divine origin realm. In Hanzhu's eyes, he was no different from an ant. The only difference was that he had seen this ant before. Back then, in order to save Zhang Guxing, Hanzhu cursed his enemy to death. They were even. The reason why Hanzhu met him was mainly that he thought that he had taken care of Han Tuo. Zhang Guxing was stunned when he saw him. Hanzhu was also sizing him up. After not seeing him for tens of thousands of years, he looked even older. Now, it was impossible for Hanzhu to call him brother anymore. He couldn't bear it, either. Zhang Guxing came back to his senses. With a complicated expression, he said, Greetings, immeasurable merit divine might heavenly sage. Hanzhu smiled. Why are you bowing to me? How have you been? He could deduce what had happened to Zhang Guxing recently, but he felt that there was no need to do anything. Some things could be done easily, but sometimes knowing everything made it boring. Zhang Guxing smiled bitterly. No, that's why I came to find you. To be honest, I don't want to get help from old friends, but I had no choice but to look for you. Hanzhu waved his hand, and a mat appeared behind Zhang Guxing. Zhang Guxing sat down and began to talk about his difficulties. It turned out that he wanted to recreate the Divine Palace and had already invited Han Tuo, Immortal Emperor Samsara, and other genius mighty figures. However, every time he created the Providence sect, it was isolated by the sages of the heavenly Tao's Providence and had never succeeded. Regarding Han Tuo, Zhang Guxing didn't hide anything. He guessed that Han Tuo was Hanzhu's son, so he had taught him the Sword Dao mystical power and even saved him. After understanding Han Tuo's understanding of his father, he was smart enough not to expose him. Hanzhu didn't expect Immortal Emperor Samsara to also join the Divine Palace. On second thought, it was probably because of Han Tuo. Immortal Emperor Samsara had watched Hanzhu grow up. If even Zhang Guxing could guess Han Tuo's identity, how could Immortal Emperor Samsara not? Immortal Emperor Samsara should also want to use the Divine Palace to officially step into the stage of the immortal world and fight for Providence. Hanzhu pinched his fingers to deduce and deduced that the sage who stopped Zhang Guxing from recreating the Divine Palace was the South Extreme Heavenly Venerate. Since Han Tuo and Immortal Emperor Samsara wanted to enter the Divine Palace, Hanzhu naturally wouldn't stop them. He couldn't put all the eggs in one basket. If all the major factions in the immortal world had disciples of the hidden sect, it would be easier for them to survive in the future. Although Hanzhu was so strong now and the hidden sect looked invincible, who knew what the future would be like? Didn't the almighty Dao sect also disband in the end? Hanzhu said, I'll help you convince them. Hearing this, Zhang Guxing was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly thanked him. Not long ago, Hanzhu also thanked him like this. Zhang Guxing looked up and asked, Han Tuo still doesn't know his background. What do you plan to do? Hanzhu replied, maintain the current situation. I have my own plans. All right. Hanju waved his sleeve and moved Zhang Guxing out to prevent the two of them from falling into an awkward situation. Tens of thousands of years were enough time to change a lot of things. At least, the relationship between the two had become subtle. Hanju wasn't in the mood to reminisce. He believed that Zhang Guxing was also not in the mood to chat. That was the truth. After leaving the 100-peak Immortal River, Zhang Guxing heaved a sigh of relief. He smiled bitterly and muttered to himself, "Sages are really impressive." Sitting in front of Hanju, he felt extremely stressed. His heartbeat accelerated every time he looked at the other party. Although it was rough, the difference between the two was too great. He couldn't stabilize his Dao heart at all. No matter what, Hanju agreed to his request. He knew Hanju very well. He wouldn't make a promise easily. He was definitely confident. Looking back at the past, Zhang Guxing sighed. The youth who had been trapped in the mortal world by the vermilion bird and did not dare to ascend had actually become a sage now. Zhang Guxing didn't think that Hanju's potential was good. No matter how good his potential was, he couldn't have become a sage in tens of thousands of years. Presumably, Hanju was a sage himself and had only descended into the mortal world to train. The divine palace in my hands will surpass my predecessors. Zhang Guxing thought with a burning gaze and immediately flew into the sky. On the other side, Hanju sent a dream to the South Extreme Heavenly Venerate. The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate agreed readily and said that he was willing to give Hanju face. He even chatted with him for a while and agreed to discuss the Tao. After the dream ended, Hanju cursed silently. The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate was really shameless. He wouldn't hit a smiling person. Because of this, Hanju owed the South Extreme Heavenly Venerate a favor. However, as long as the South Extreme Heavenly Venerate didn't oppose him, he could still tolerate it. 80 years later, I, Zhang Guxing, follow the will of my predecessors and recreate the Divine Palace. Those with outstanding potential in the myriad worlds can enter the Divine Palace. The Divine Palace is ranked by potential. I want to create a sect that is absolutely fair to the prodigies. I want to use my own strength to fight for the heavenly Tao's providence. Zhang Guxing's voice resounded throughout the immortal world, but it did not attract much attention. Ever since the birth of the famous race, the mighty figures who established Providence sects would use certain gimmicks to promote themselves in the mortal world. Hanju counted with his fingers. Han Tuo and Immortal Emperor Samsara had already joined the Divine Palace. Not only them, but even the previous sect master of the Jie school, Jing Tiangong, and the demon saint, Yi Tian, had joined it. Currently, the Divine Palace had more than 10,000 disciples. Other than Jing Tiangong and Immortal Emperor Samsara, there were no Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals for the time being. Hanju turned his gaze to Hanyu. Ever since he cultivated the 6 paths of reincarnation technique, Hanyu's cultivation level had increased day by day. However, compared to Han Tuo, his potential was too poor. Currently, there was no hope of him reaching the deity realm unless Hanju thought of a way to increase his potential. Hanju did not have any expectations. This only added a hint of joy to his boring cultivation years, just like the dramas in his previous life. The one he really looked forward to was Han Tuo. Hanju hoped that his son could transform into a primordial fiend celestial. Hanyu was still in seclusion in the valley. Hanju looked away after a while and continued cultivating. Above the sea of clouds, palaces floated one after another. Countless figures shuttled back and forth, casting spells on the palaces and condensing them. Dressed in black, Han Tuo stood in front of the door of a palace. He looked at the steadily increasing Divine Palace and sighed. After cultivating for so long, he finally had a place to stay. The Divine Palace was newly established. He was one of the core members and was currently one of its leaders. He knew very well that compared to the other leaders, he was the weakest. The new Jing Tiangong even raised doubts. At that time, Yi Tian almost attacked him. Fortunately, Zhang Guxing and Immortal Emperor Samsara stood up to support him. This matter ended there. EAD new chapters on no vel in, calm someone doubted. Han Tuo was not angry. Instead, he was stimulated. After watching the Divine Palace disciples for a while, Han Tuo turned around and entered his chamber to continue cultivating. Sitting on the mat, Han Tuo closed his eyes. He was suddenly pulled into a dream. This was a forest. A figure shining with divine light stood in front of him. Han Tuo was shocked. What happened? How can I not notice? Han Tuo looked at the other party warily and asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" The divine light figure was naturally Hanju. Hanju asked in an ethereal voice, "I see that you are unwilling. You seem to be dissatisfied with your cultivation. I can teach you a Dao technique, but you have to pay the price. Are you willing?" Han Tuo frowned when he heard this. His first reaction was to reject, but on second thought, if the other party was so powerful and wanted to harm him, why did he have to beat around the bush? Han Tuo asked, "What do I have to do? I don't even know who you are. Why should I believe you? In the past, you came looking for me. I looked for you?" Han Tuo frowned and fell into deep thought. He was suddenly moved. "You are the master of the hidden sect? This matter cannot be spread. I will teach you a Dao technique. You owe me your life. In the future, I need you to do something. As for whether you will offer your life, that will depend on whether you work hard enough. As long as you are strong enough, no matter how strong an opponent is, they will fall under your feet." Hanju's tone was bewitching. Han Tuo fell silent again. If it was Hanju, he would definitely reject, but he wanted to know what Han Tuo would choose. In fact, Hanju could use the derivation function to deduce, but there was no need. If that happened, he would lose the joy of anticipation, and it would also be a waste of his lifespan. "I agree," Han Tuo said in a low voice. "I know that my potential is very strong, but it's not enough. In terms of potential, I'm inferior to Yi Tian. In terms of cultivation, I'm inferior to Jing Tiangong. I need a huge opportunity. Senior, please teach me your Dao technique." Hanju didn't say anything else and started to preach the great Dao of extreme origin. Inside the Taoist temple, Hanju opened his eyes. He had preached the Dao for Han Tuo alone for 100 years and had finally introduced him to the great Dao of extreme origin. Presumably, in the following period of time, Han Tuo's cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. He would also loosen the suppression on Han Tuo's bloodline and let his potential increase again. As for Jing Tiangong, although he was his believer, Hanju didn't stop him. He was happy to see him bringing pressure to Han Tuo to prevent him from stopping. Of course, if the two of them really had a death grudge, Hanju would still come forward. He had always found Jing Tiangong pleasing to the eye. When fighting for supreme treasures in various mystic realms, the Divine Palace's performance was eye-catching. In the same realm, very few cultivators could defeat the Divine Palace disciples. The Divine Palace's reputation became stronger, and more prodigies joined it. During this period of time, Han Tuo had been cultivating in seclusion. Jing Tiangong was increasingly dissatisfied with him, thinking that he had not contributed to the Divine Palace. However, Zhang Guxing favored Han Tuo, so Jing Tiangong could do nothing. Although Jing Tiangong was a pseudo-sage, his identity was very awkward because he had betrayed the Jie school. Other than the Divine Palace, he had nowhere to go. 2,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Hanju walked out of the Taoist temple and started to preach the Tao for the hidden sect. Just like before, he preached for 100 years. After the lecture, Hanju brought Li Xianao back to the Taoist temple. Several decades ago, Li Xianao had returned, but Hanju did not want to interrupt the lecture, so he did not say anything after moving him in. Li Xianao was also very sensible. He began to listen to the Tao the moment he entered and did not disturb anyone. Li Xianao suddenly woke up. Seeing him, he immediately knelt down. Hanju asked, "Why are you back?" Li Xian'eo said, "The heavenly race has already stabilized. There's no need for me to help them anymore. I wanted to return to Cultivate and increase my cultivation. I can also help you deal with matters when I'm stronger." Hanju stared at him and didn't reply immediately. Li Xian'eo was very calm, but facing Hanju's gaze, he still felt inexplicably guilty. "That's fine. Although your potential is far inferior to your senior, you're more multi-talented than him. I happen to need your talent. The hidden sect's internal affairs require your management," Hanju said. Li Xian'eo was relieved. Hanju didn't say anything else and waved his hand to signal him to leave. Li Xian'eo bowed and left. He was in a good mood on the way back. After staying in the heavenly race for a long time, he suddenly felt that it was meaningless. Although the heavenly race was rapidly becoming stronger, he knew that Hanju was behind this. He wanted to stand beside Hanju and look down at the heavenly Daogo board from a higher angle. He believed that Hanju's vision was not only limited to the immortal world. On the other side, Hanju was reading the emails. Some were attacked, some obtained opportunities, and some learned mystical powers. There were all sorts of things, and Hanju watched with relish. At this moment, "I am the human school's heavenly venerate Shindu. 300 years later, I will preach the Tao in the universal hall outside the 33rd heaven. All living beings can come and listen to the Tao." Heavenly venerate Shindu began to move. Hanju could already insta-kill him, so he was not too worried. He looked at Fang Liang because of this. Fang Liang was still fusing with the Tao ancestor. This kid had already attained the perfected Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm. It was too exaggerated. The enlightenment of the heavenly Tao's origin was indeed impressive. Hanju suddenly had a bold thought. If I imprison Fang Liang in the primordial heavenly prison, will the Tao ancestor notice and stop me? The Tao ancestor is above the limits of the Tao field and will definitely sense it. As for whether he will stop it, the system cannot derive it. Hanju could only give up. He couldn't offend the Tao ancestor rashly for the time being. Hanju turned his gaze to Hanyu. This guy had already reached the cultivation level of a Grand Unity Heaven Immortal. It was not bad. The 6 paths of reincarnation technique had indeed transformed him completely. However, compared to his ancestor Han Tuo, Hanyu was still far inferior. Han Tuo had already stepped into the deity realm and was still cultivating in seclusion. All living beings cultivated cultivation techniques, while he cultivated the Great Tao. His cultivation method was already comparable to a sage. How could his cultivation speed not be fast? Han Tuo and Hanyu were both in seclusion, so Hanju didn't have the experience of watching dramas. However, there will still satisfied him. Speaking of which, Hanju had another descendant. Han Tuo's daughter, Han Xinyuan. Han Xinyuan had died a long time ago, but she was accepted by the king of Hell Yang Tiandong. She was currently in the netherworld as a ghost servant. Yang Tiandong knew Han Tuo, so he accepted her. Hanju didn't pay too much attention to Han Xinyuan. Anyway, she was safe for the time being. Since Hanju had nothing to do, he looked at Han Xinyuan. Han Xinyuan's job was very simple. She helped Yang Tiandong record the life and death of a certain world. There were several ghost servants in the same position, and they did their own things. It was not tiring. At this moment, Han Xinyuan was cultivating in her residence. Hanju looked at her and did not feel a sense of intimacy. Han Xinyuan was not like Han Tuo and was probably similar to her mother. After watching for a while, Hanju lost interest. As for giving Han Xinyuan some advice, he felt that there was no need for it for the time being. It was only because Han Xinyuan did not have much desire for power. Then, Hanju closed his eyes and continued cultivating. The descendants had their own blessing. He had to constantly become stronger in order to protect his descendants and the people around him. Most importantly, he had to protect himself. In the netherworld, underworld, young Tiandong had just finished investigating a vengeful spirit case and could not help but sigh. Such days were too boring. He began to feel tormented. Ever since he became the king of hell, he had no time to cultivate. Occasionally, mighty figures from the world of the living came to cause trouble and wanted to use him to increase their battle achievements and become famous in the heavens. At this moment, a figure flew into the hall. Young Tiandong looked up and was stunned. He smiled and said, "Why are you here?" It was Han Tuo. After stepping into the deity realm, Han Tuo already had the aura of an expert. The surrounding ghost servants couldn't help but shiver when they sensed his aura. Han Tuo smiled and said, "I'm here to visit an old friend. If not for the King of Hell's help, I would have died long ago." Young Tiandong smiled teasingly. "I think you know that your daughter is here, right?" Han Tuo cupped his fists and smiled. "Thank you for your kind treatment, King of Hell. Otherwise, my daughter would have long fallen into the cycle of reincarnation and severed the karma between us. I want to see her. After all, she's the only family I have left in this world." At the mention of Han Xinyuan, Han Tuo felt guilty. He had indeed forgotten about her all these years. He wondered how she was doing. "She's not the only relative you have." Young Tiandong supported his chin with both hands and smiled faintly. Stunned, Han Tuo asked in surprise, "Could it be that I still have descendants living?" Young Tiandong shook his head and laughed. "Not only descendants. Your father is still alive. Perhaps you have other siblings, too." Young Tiandong didn't dare to say it, afraid that he would disturb Hanju's plan. He only said, "You also have a descendant named Hanyu. He's already a Grand Unity Heaven Immortal. If you pity him, you can take him into the Divine Palace. Ever since the Han family was wiped out, he has little karma and has always been alone." At the mention of Hanyu, he thought of Hanju. Hanju was the same back then. Speaking of which, Hanyu was much more like Hanju. Hanyu. Han Tuo's eyes flickered as he silently remembered this name. Immortal world, in the seas. On a vast island, millions of transformed living beings sat on the mountains and plains, listening to the Tao. At this moment, the sect master of the Jie school, Huang Zuntian, stood in front of his Taoist temple and looked at the mighty figure he had invited from afar. Looking at the current Jie school, he was filled with pride. Although he had no choice but to become the sect master, under his leadership, the Jie school became stronger and stronger. They already had the right to look forward to the immortal world. A figure landed in front of him. It was a disciple. He knelt in front of Huang Zuntian and said, "Master, the heavenly ancestor has already agreed to your alliance plan and is willing to destroy the demons together." He had always looked down on demons. He felt that they were too weak and did not have a leader. "Find new Tories on Nov Yi, L, Bin." Calm, the disciple replied, "The heavenly race is willing to send 500 immortal emperors after we battle the demons." 500 immortal emperors. Huang Zuntian frowned. He was a little disappointed. 500 immortal emperors might cause trouble for the deity realm, but facing Zenith Heaven, they were no different from mortals. However, this was also good. The less the heavenly race contributed, the more confident he would be when splitting the benefits. "Yes, you can leave first." "Yes." After the disciple left, Huang Zuntian continued to look at the distant lecture. There was no hurry in fighting the demons. He had to deploy them. He couldn't let the tragedy that had happened in the mortal world tens of thousands of years ago happen again. But then again, he had bumped into a sage. Otherwise, he might not have lost. Like the others, Huang Zuntian determined that Hanju was a sage and was only reincarnating to train. Huang Zuntian turned around and returned to the Taoist temple. He smiled confidently and expectantly. Now, he could not pursue much. Only the sage position could make him risk everything. Time passed. More than 1500 years passed. detected that you are 80,000 years old and your life has taken another step forward. You have the following choices. 1. Exit seclusion immediately and head to the deity realm of the ruins of N to pursue the Great Tao. You can obtain a heavenly Tao spirit stone, a Great Tao fragment, a supreme treasure, and a mystical power inheritance. 2. Cultivate in a low-profile manner and do not leave the area of the heavenly Tao. You can obtain a Great Tao fragment and a random natural treasure. Hanju opened his eyes and cursed the dog system. Trying to lure me out again. Hanju directly chose the second option. It was impossible for him to leave the heavenly Tao. Hanju's cultivation path was to let his territory constantly expand and not go to foreign places to wander. You chose to cultivate in a low-profile manner and obtained a Great Tao fragment and a random natural treasure. Congratulations on obtaining the Buzhou Divine Mountain. Buzhou Divine Mountain, it is formed by the backbone of the giant god Pango. It can produce Kanei Qi and increase the providence of the heavenly Tao. As long as you throw it into the ground, it can evolve by itself. Hanju was stunned. The system could even produce the Buzhou Divine Mountain? A long time ago, the Buzhou Divine Mountain was broken by the ancestral Magus. After that, all living beings could no longer see the Buzhou Divine Mountain's majesty. Hanju took it out. A small mountain floated in his hand, and he couldn't feel its weight. What was the use of this? Hanju no longer needed to rely on natural treasures to increase the spirit qi in the Tao field. The Tao field itself was filled with spirit qi. He suddenly noticed that this thing could increase the heavenly Tao's providence. He immediately had an idea. He sent a dream to Li Daokong and asked him to return. Half a day later, Li Daokong arrived outside the 100-peak Immortal River and was moved into the Tao field by him. Hanju took out the Buzhou Divine Mountain and said, "This is the Buzhou Divine Mountain. Take it and choose a vast place to put it down. It can allow you to obtain the heavenly Tao's providence. Hold it well. This is your first step to becoming a sage." Li Daokong was stunned. He had also heard of the legend of Buzhou Divine Mountain. Where did Sect Master obtain it? Shocked, Li Daokong subconsciously reached out to take the Buzhou Divine Mountain. From now on, you're the Buzhou Divine Mountain's master. You can do whatever you want with it. Hanju chuckled. Li Daokong asked, "What do you need me to do?" Hanju said, "If a living being goes to Buzhou Divine Mountain, you can also accept it and help increase your providence. Without merit, it's very difficult to become a sage. Of course, if you want to use your strength to attain the Tao, that's fine too, but the time needed is immeasurable. Since ancient times, every sage has relied on the heavenly Tao purple qi to become a sage. There are too few cultivators who use their strength to attain the Tao." Li Daokong had no system and was not a primordial fiend celestial. Hanju didn't believe that he could use his strength to attain the Tao. Even if he had this potential, he couldn't escape the heavenly Tao's karma. The reason Hanju could was that he didn't rely on the heavenly Tao at all and had been cultivating in the system's Tao field. The heavenly Tao couldn't restrain him. "I understand," Li Daokong said in a low voice, his heart filled with gratitude. Hanju really wanted to help him become a sage. Hanju waved his sleeve and moved Li Daokong out. The path had been paved. What to do next was up to Li Daokong. Hanju hoped that Li Daokong could control the heavenly Tao alone. This way, he wouldn't be restricted by it. 74 years later. I am the first guardian of the hidden sect, Li Daokong. Today, I have restored the Buzhou Divine Mountain and strengthened the heavenly Tao's providence. All sword cultivators of the myriad worlds can come to the Buzhou Divine Mountain to ask about the sword Tao. Li Daokong's voice suddenly resounded through the myriad worlds. At the same time, all the cultivators above the deity realm could sense that the providence in the east had increased. This time, even the sages outside the 33rd heaven were alarmed. They gathered in the heavenly venerate Shen Du's hall. Is it really the Buzhou Divine Mountain? Indeed. I've seen the Buzhou Divine Mountain before. This aura is correct. How did Hangzhou obtain it? I'm not sure. It might be formed by some mystical power. With this move, Li Daokong's position as a future sage is stable. The sages sighed. Even heavenly venerate Xian Du was the same. The masters of the sages, Fuxishan, and heavenly venerate Xian Du had all seen Buzhou Divine Mountain before. They had even stayed there for a period of time. Looking at the majestic huge vein rising, they felt as if they were seeing the vicissitudes of the primordial world. After putting down Buzhou Divine Mountain, a huge heavenly Dao merit descended from the sky and landed on Li Daokong. The Buzhou Divine Mountain was vast and could produce endless connate qi. It could nurture countless living beings. This merit was extremely great and was enough to increase Li Daokong's cultivation level by a minor realm. As more and more living beings appeared on the Buzhou Divine Mountain in the future, the providence of the heavenly Dao that nurtured Li Daokong was even more unimaginable. Li Daokong immediately became famous in the heavens. The hidden sect became famous again. A guardian was already so powerful. How strong was the sect master, the immeasurable merit divine might heavenly sage? In a valley in the immortal world, Han Yu stood up and looked to the east. He muttered, Buzhou Divine Mountain, Sword Cultivator. Ever since he ascended, he had been wandering around aimlessly. Now that such an opportunity had appeared, he felt that this was his chance. Not hesitating, he immediately flew towards the majestic aura. Perhaps he could even acknowledge the mighty figure named Li Daokong as his master. It was not only Han Yu. Countless living beings in the myriad worlds had such thoughts. 13th Heaven. Ji Xianshan stood in a courtyard and looked down at the sea of clouds. Good move. As expected of master, Ji Xianshan was secretly shocked. The Buzhou Divine Mountain's providence was truly terrifying. It had just landed and was already more majestic than his entire heavenly race. Such a method was definitely used by Hangzhou to support Li Daokong. Recalling the legends of the Buzhou Divine Mountain, he suddenly understood. Legend had it that the Buzhou Divine Mountain was formed by the creation of the giant god Pangu, Qiu Liang. The heavenly Tao was the will of the giant god Pangu. How could the appearance of the Buzhou Divine Mountain not receive a response from the heavenly Tao? Ji Xianshan frowned. Wait! If Li Daokong had the Buzhou Divine Mountain, would he still guard the heavenly race? The hidden sect immortal emperors in the heavenly race would probably also leave.